On the order, please remain seated.
All right, we have the defense. We finally have all the jurors. Took them a minute, but they're here. Is the defense back there? All right, let me have the defendants, please. Please have your first witness ready. Good morning.
Judge.
Good morning. Okay. All right, let me have a jury, please.
One moment before they come in, Your Honor, I just wanted to make the court aware. I think I told Ms. Jones, I don't know if I told you or not, but I have a witness that is necessary that's not available on Thursday. I don't know how much longer your case is going to go, but he's taking his lieutenant exam Thursday.
So I expect, Your Honor, if we don't rest today, it'll be tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine. Let me have a jury, please.
Miss Hemingway stepped out, Judge.
Yes, Miss Kim.
All right, can we see where she is? I need to be set up here, right here. No, do I need to be? Good morning.
Oh, your Zoom's not set up?
No. Can you set it up?
Well, I told him to wait because we had to. Well, you're not logged in. Well, you need to log in first.
All right.
Sure. You need to log in.
Okay, it's on.
Go to your email.
My Outlook.
Give us a second.
All rise for the jury.
How do I do it?
We still.
Hold on, what's that?
Are they not ready?
Anyway,
Yeah, we're waiting. Yeah, we're not ready. Sorry about that. Let me see where she is.
What do you want me to do?
We're not ready. Oh, okay.
All right, now we're ready.
Hold on.
We still don't have
Hold
Miss
on,
Hemingway,
Judge.
Judge.
She's right here. All right, let me have a jury.
Judge, give me a second. It'll take me a second to get online.
All right. This will be live stream.
Once you get on, it takes me a minute.
Now what do I do? Hit launch meeting? Now what do I do?
You need to turn it.
Camera on. Okay, hang on. No, it's not there. Join the computer audio.
No, we do not.
We're certainly acting like it.
Unclick this and you'll be.
Now, what do I do here? X out of that. Okay.
Recording in progress.
All right, we're ready for a jury. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you again for coming back and for your service. Please be seated. Please call the state's next witness.
They would call Miss Abby Holman.
Good morning.
Raise your right hand. You swear to the testimony you're about to report the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Okay?
I do.
You may be seated. You can let your first and last name and spell it both, please.
It's Abby Holman, ABBYHOLMAN.
Please speak into the microphone.
If I can move the chair.
You can adjust the microphone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Holman, can you tell the jurors how you are currently employed?
I am currently employed at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in the Division of Forensic Sciences in the Firearm and Tool Mark section.
Okay. And Ms. Holman, how long have you been employed with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation or the GBI?
I've been employed for about 4.5 years.
Okay. And have you always worked within the firearms section in those 4 years?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jurors a little bit what is the firearms section of GBI or the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
That is just the section where we receive any ammunition components that have been fired. So that's bullets and cartridge cases or any firearms that are related to an incident that are sent to us.
Okay, and as a member of that section, can you tell the jurors a little bit about what you do or what your daily job duties and responsibilities are?
Yes, so my main duty as a firearms examiner is to determine whether a bullet or cartridge case, so there's fired ammunition components, have been fired from a particular firearm. If a firearm is not submitted with a case, it's to determine what type of firearm those ammunition components potentially could have been fired from.
And can you tell the jurors a little bit about your educational training and background as it relates to what you just described that you do as a firearms examiner?
Yes, so I have a Bachelor of Science in Forensic Science from the University of Tampa. Then after getting hired in the GBI in 2020, I went through a 20-month in-house training program. So this trained me in all of the areas that we provide services in. So it's going to be firearms, their operation, manufacture, and design, as well as ammunition. It's going to be the microscopic comparison of those fired ammunition components. And then we also provide serial number restoration, muzzle to target distance determination, and tool mark analysis.
And you said you've been doing that, I guess, the entire 4 years that you've been with the GBI?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, in your time working as a firearms examiner, can you estimate for the jurors about how many cases that you worked while being a member of the GBI?
My estimate would be around 180 cases.
Okay. And of those 180 cases, did they all involve analyzing, testing, working with ballistics evidence, whether it be shell casings, projectiles, bullets, things of that nature?
Yes, they did.
At this time, Your Honor, the state would tender Ms. Holman as an expert identification.
No objection.
No objection.
So declared.
Now, I want to start, Ms. Holman. Can you explain to the jurors, are you able to determine how bullets and cartridge cases are fired from particular firearms?
Yes, we are.
And can you explain to the jurors a little bit about how you're able to do that?
Sure. So when I receive a piece of evidence, whether it be a bullet or a cartridge case, I'm going to be looking at what we call class characteristics. So these characteristics are determined by the firearm manufacturer prior to the firearm being made. So these can be the same across many different manufacturers. And these class characteristics are different between bullets and cartridge cases. So bullets, for example, they interact with the barrel of the firearm, and typically the barrel has what we call rifling in it. This is a series of cut or impressed grooves in the barrel of a firearm, and they go at a certain twist. This will impart spin to that bullet, kind of like a quarterback throwing a football. It will be more accurate and it will go longer. So with that rifling, there can be a certain number of these lands and grooves. So you can have 5 lands and grooves, you can have 6 lands and grooves, and they can also go a left twist or a right twist. And then if those lands and grooves are measurable, we can also measure the widths of those lands and grooves. So those are all the class characteristics we're looking at to determine if this bullet could have been fired from the firearm. So if those class characteristics match, we'll then move on to our microscopic comparison. So we'll test fire the firearm, we'll get those bullets and cartridge cases to compare to the bullets and cartridge cases that we have received, and we will do a microscopic comparison. So this is done using a comparison microscope. It's essentially two biology high school class microscopes pushed together, and I can see through one lens my evidence on the left and my evidence on the right. So I can see these at the same magnification and lighting and compare them together. And we're looking at what we call individual characteristics at this point. So these are microscopic imperfections that are imparted to the parts of the firearm during the manufacturing process. And these are random and unique to an individual firearm. And that's how we come to our determinations. Was this bullet fired from this firearm?
Okay, and I just want to break that down just briefly. So can you tell the jurors, class characteristic, is that something that is common among, I guess, the same firearm of the same class, for example?
It can be, yes.
Okay, and I guess tell the jurors when you're examining either a projectile or a shell casing, I guess as it relates to the class characteristics, what specifically are you looking for?
So again, for those bullets, we are looking at the rifling. Do I have 6 lands and grooves on my firearm? Do I have 6 lands and grooves on my bullet? Are they measuring the same distance? Are they going at the same twist? And then we also look at caliber. So caliber is just the specific type of cartridge that a firearm is chambered for. So if you have a 9mm pistol, you can shoot 9mm cartridges in that firearm. And then for cartridge cases, it's a little bit different. They're interacting with a different part of the firearm. So during that firing process, the bullet is going to go down the barrel, and then inversely, the cartridge case is going to slam back up against what we call the breech face of the firearm. That breech face is just there to kind of contain and hold that cartridge case during the firing process. So during the firing process, a firing pin will come out of an aperture, and it will hit a part of the cartridge, what we call the primer. So this primer is going to ignite a spark, and that spark will then ignite the gunpowder in the bottom of a cartridge. That will then send the bullet down the barrel and this cartridge case back up against the breech face. So that, I lost track of what I was talking about.
The last thing you said was something about the breech face, the cartridge cases, the breech face.
I'll try and start over. So the firing pin, that's going to come out and hit the primer. So that is going to be different shapes among different types of firearms. So it can be hemispherical, it can be elliptical, for example, and then the actual aperture it comes through is going to be different shapes as well. So it can be rectangular, it can be circular, and stuff like that. So we're looking at the shapes of those on the cartridge case compared to our firearm as well. And then the breech face itself can be machined differently, firearm manufacturer to firearm manufacturer. So we can have granular breech face marks, we can have parallel lines on there, they can be arched, and they can also be circular. So we're looking at all of these things to determine, could this have been fired from this firearm?
Now, at this moment, are you only able to do testing or the testing you described if you have, let's say, a firearm?
If I want to make test fires and compare it to evidence that I have, yes, but we can also potentially tell what type of firearm a bullet or cartridge case, if it's just by itself, could have been fired from.
Now, if you have, let's say, a series of cartridge casings and then a series of projectiles, can you explain to the jurors when you have those two types of ballistic evidence, are you able to compare one to the other, or do you only compare shell casings, cartridge casings and projectiles to projectiles?
So we only compare bullets to bullets and cartridge cases to cartridge cases because they're interacting with those different parts of the firearm. They will not have any of the same markings.
Okay, and can you tell the jurors what is the difference between a pistol and a revolver?
So a pistol, the main difference is that those cartridge cases, once the firing process is done, they are going to be automatically ejected and extracted out of the firearm. With a revolver, you have to take them out manually.
Now, tell the jurors as a part of your process and procedures after you've completed the testing and the procedures you just described, do you memorialize your findings or conclusions in a report each time?
Yes, we do.
And can you tell the jurors after you have done your testing and before a report is completed and released, can you explain to the jurors the process of DBI requires as it relates to peer reviewing and things of that nature in order for the report to be complete?
Yes, so we have a two-step peer review process. So the first step of that process is called verification. So after I've done any of my microscopic comparisons, all of that evidence is then given to a second qualified examiner. They're going to look at all of my evidence. They're going to come to their own conclusions about that evidence. And then if our conclusions are the same at the end of that process, I can then go ahead and draft my report. Once it is drafted, it will be peer reviewed by a third qualified examiner. So they are looking inside my case file at all of my documentation, all of my photos. They're making sure I followed all of our policies and procedures and that the conclusions on my report are supported by the data in my case file.
Now, before you do the testing that you described, can you explain to the jury briefly the process and how you receive evidence that you're going to eventually do an analysis or perform a test on?
Yes, so we receive evidence in one of three ways. It can be received by our evidence receiving section directly from the agency that is submitting it. They can put it in a lockbox and then we open it from the other side and that's how we get it. And then you can also ship evidence to us. So once we get the evidence and evidence receiving, those people will take the evidence, take photos of it. A Division of Forensic Science case number is assigned to that particular case. And every single piece of evidence for that case will have a little label with the barcode for that. So that keeps track of the chain of custody. We will scan it from one location to another location. And then it'll have that Division of Forensic Science case number on there.
When evidence is submitted by, let's say, different agencies as it relates to the same case, are there times where different DOFS case numbers are assigned to each piece of evidence because when you receive it, you don't know that the cases are related? Is that something that happens?
That can happen, yes.
Okay. And did you receive evidence as it relates to DOFS case number, the DBI case number 2022-1007734?
I did.
Can you tell the jurors, if you recall, what evidence did you receive in early May?
So I received a 38 class bullet fragment and a bullet jacket fragment.
And, did you complete a report as it relates to the evidence that you received and the testing that you did on that evidence?
Yes, I did.
And I want to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 123. Look up when you're done. And do you recognize what's been marked as States Exhibit 123?
I do.
And can you tell the jurors how you recognize it and what it is?
This is the official report that I wrote for this case. It has the Division of Forensic Science case number at the top, and then it also has my signature at the bottom of the report.
And is this report in States Exhibit 123 a fair and accurate copy of the report that you did as it relates to the evidence that you described that you received with bullet fragment item number 3 as it relates to this case?
Yes.
This time around, the state pretender was marked as States Exhibit 123 in the evidence.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted, you may publish.
Now, Ms. Holman, can you explain to the jurors or tell the jurors where did the evidence that you tested as it relates to this report, who was it submitted by, or where did it come from?
It was submitted by the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors what exactly was submitted, or what was the evidence that you reviewed?
So I received a 38 class bullet fragment and then a jacket fragment as well.
Can you explain to the jurors what's the difference fragment and a jacket fragment?
So typically when you have a whole bullet received, it will be jacketed in a metal. It can be copper, it can be nickel, and then inside of that will be lead typically. So I received a bullet fragment. It wasn't an entire bullet, it was damaged. And then I received just a part of that bullet jacket. So it's just going to be that copper or metal jacket with no lead attached to it.
And I want to show you previously admitted into evidence that states Exhibit 122. And if you'll take a minute to look at that. Is that the evidence that you received from the Fulton County Medical Examiner's office that you just described?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, can you explain to the jurors when you received that evidence and the first steps that you took as it relates to the testing that you performed?
So when I first received this, first thing I'm going to do is look at those class characteristics to determine potentially if I can give a list of firearms this was fired from, since there was no firearm submitted. So we're looking at the type of rifling, we're looking at does it go left or right, we're looking at if I can potentially give a caliber to this bullet, all of those class characteristics.
Okay. And were you able to, from looking at the type of rifling, whether you were able to see if it went left or right, and the caliber of the fragments, were you able to come up with or provide a list of potential firearms that it was fired from?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And first, what caliber was the fragments that you tested in item number 3 from your report states 123?
So the bullet fragment was damaged, so I gave sort of an umbrella class caliber. So 38 class is the caliber I gave this bullet. So within 38 class, you're going to have different specific calibers. So that includes 9mm, it includes 357 SIG, it includes 38 special. So there's a lot of different calibers underneath this. And since it was so damaged, I couldn't particularly tell what specific caliber this bullet was.
Okay. Now, did you also additionally receive more evidence as it relates to the case that you just described?
This is the only evidence I've received, I believe.
I want to show you what's been marked as states at 124. And you'll review states at 124. Do you recognize states at 124?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors how do you recognize it and what is it?
So this is the official report I rendered. It's a different DOFS case number at the top with my initials at the bottom.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, do you see, well, is this report a fair and accurate copy of the report that you authored as it relates to the evidence that you received in this report?
It appears to be.
Your Honor, this time the state would tender with remark that states that 124 into evidence.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted, you may publish.
Now, Ms. Holman, do you see, you saw states at 123 in front of you as well?
Yes.
And if you're looking at states at 123 and 124, do you see under the heading or title case individuals where it says victim?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors in both states at 123 and states at 124 what is the name of the victim on both of those reports?
So on States Exhibit 123, the victim is Thomas Arnold, and then States Exhibit 124, I have the victim as Thomas Arnold.
Okay. And is this an instance where there is two separate DOFS or GDI case numbers, but they are related cases?
Yes.
Okay. And as it relates to States Exhibit 124, which is DOFS case number 202210055581, can you tell the jurors the evidence that you received in relation to this case?
Yes, so I received one 9mm cartridge case.
Okay.
So this cartridge case came from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office.
I'm registering you from entered into evidence previously as State's Exhibit 92. If you'll take a minute to look at that, do you recognize State's Exhibit 92?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell the jurors what is State's Exhibit 92 as it relates to the testing that you did and the items listed in State's Exhibit 124?
So this is the 9mm cartridge case that I received.
And can you describe for the jurors, I know we talked about the evidence that you received and reported in your report in State's Exhibit 123 were bullet fragments. Can you tell the jurors the process and the procedures or the initial testing that you do as it relates to this piece of evidence, a cartridge case?
Yes, so this is the same process. We're going to be looking at the class characteristics of the cartridge case. So that firing pin impression, what shape is it? What shape is the aperture that it's going through? What are the breech face marks looking like? And we also have the extractor and ejector. So the extractor will actually pull the rim of that cartridge case out of the chamber. So that will leave a mark in a certain area on the rim of the cartridge case. And then the ejector will actually come out and hit that cartridge case and kick it out of the firearm. So that will be in a certain place and be a certain shape as well. So we're looking at all of these class characteristics to determine a potential firearm this could have been fired from.
And when you're looking at the class characteristics that you saw as it relates to your review and analysis on this cartridge case, can you tell the jurors, were you able to come up with a list or determine a type of firearm in which this cartridge case was fired from?
Yes, I was.
And can you tell the jurors what was that firearm or what was that list?
So it's consistent with being fired in Glock 9mm pistols.
Okay, and can you explain to the jurors why or how were you able to make that specific finding as it relates to a Glock 9?
Yes, so when we're looking at those class characteristics, we have an internal breech face database. So that's maintained by one of the examiners at the lab. It's known class characteristics from known firearms. So we have those breech face marks in there. We have what the firing pin shape is. We have what the aperture shape is. So we're going to plug all of the class characteristics of our cartridge case evidence into that database, and that will give us back a list of potential firearms that could have been fired from.
Okay, and then just to go back to your report in States of 123, within the list that you provided from the possible firearms that would file the fragments, was one of the firearms listed within the list a Glock 9mm?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Ms. Holman. I don't think I have any further questions pending redirect. Defense counsel may have some questions.
Your testimony is that you can tell that the 9mm cartridge was fired from a 9mm Glock pistol.
Potentially, it is not an all-inclusive list. There could have been other potential firearms it could have been fired from.
Okay, and you don't know, you never had a weapon to compare it to?
No.
All right, so you don't know what weapon it came out of?
No, that list is not all-inclusive.
And going back to the date of your State's Exhibit 123, which is the fragment, what date did you receive that item?
I received the bullet fragment on March 4th, 2022.
And when was it tested?
I don't know when I started my examination on this, but my report date was released in May 16th, 2024.
Okay, May of 2024.
Yes.
And same question regarding the fragment. Is it correct that that wasn't tested and, you didn't do a report regarding the test until August of 2024?
For the bullet?
For the shell casing.
My report was released in October of 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Just one question. Normally, how long does it take to test the cartridge or the shell casing?
It can depend. We do have a backlog of cases coming in, so we prioritize expedited case numbers that are going to court. We mainly work homicides at this point, so if anything is an aggravated assault or usually doesn't have a firearm associated with it, it could be any amount of time before we test it.
Thank you.
Anything further of this witness?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may be excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please call the state's next witness.
If you call Christopher Malsaka, I'm not saying it correctly. We'll let him say it right. For the record, Ms. Court Reporter is Maselka.
Good morning.
I do.
What's the last name and spell it both for the record, please?
My name is Christopher Maselka, spelled Christopher. Last name is Maselka.
Good afternoon, or excuse me, good morning, sir.
Morning.
Can you tell the jurors how you are currently employed?
I'm employed with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in the Division of Forensic Sciences, also known as the State Crime Lab. I'm employed as a forensic toxicologist.
And can you tell the jurors how long have you been employed with, worked with GBI?
A little over 7 years.
And in those 7 years, have you always worked in the forensics division?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors specifically some of your job duties and responsibilities working in that division?
My job in forensic toxicology is to test blood, urine, and other bodily specimens for the presence of alcohol and drugs.
And can you tell the jurors a little bit about your educational background and the training that you've received in order to test blood for the substance that you just described?
I've earned my Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry from Kennesaw State University, and then I've undergone the training program through the GBI for forensic toxicology, where we go over blood alcohol testing, the process, how the testing works, how the pharmacology of alcohol, as in what it does to the body and what the body does to it. We go over the instrumentation, how the instrumentation works, how to use the instrumentation, how to do maintenance on the instrumentation. We go over the reporting process, how to issue reports. We go over a peer review process. After all the training, we do a proficiency testing to show that I'm competent in performing the tests and reporting out. And that's my training.
Well, you're here, so I'm assuming you passed, right?
Sorry?
I said you're here, so I'm assuming you passed, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, you said you've been doing that for the last 7 years?
Well, I've been doing forensic toxicology for about 4 years. I was a forensic serologist before that.
Okay. And can you explain to the jurors, I guess, what is forensic toxicology specifically?
It's just we test blood and urine and other bodily specimens for the presence of drugs and alcohol.
Okay, and you said that you've been doing that for the last a little over 4 years?
Yes.
And you testified in court as it relates to the testing that you have done in the past as it relates to the blood, urine, or seed that you talked about. Excuse me, blood and urine that you talked about.
Yes, I've testified 8 times for blood alcohol testing, and I've testified 8 times for forensic serology.
Okay. And Your Honor, this time, State Pretender Mr. Malseka
No objection, Your Honor.
So declared.
And, Mr. Malsecca, I want to draw your attention to, DOFS case number 2022-100-7734. You recognize, that GBI, case number?
Is that again?
Say that again?
Yeah, repeat it.
Sorry, do you recognize, that case number, as a case that you received evidence and worked on?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors, what evidence did you receive, and how did you receive it?
Do you mind if I look at my notes?
Sure. That'll help refresh your recollection.
Repeat the case number you mentioned one more time.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Please.
DOFS or GBI case number 2022-100-7734.
Okay, yeah, yes. So in that case, I received 3 tubes containing peripheral blood and a bottle of urine.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors who, what agency, if you can tell, did you receive that evidence from?
The Fulton County Medical Examiner.
Can you briefly describe how do you receive that evidence from the Fulton County Medical Examiner's office as it relates to the evidence you eventually test?
Sure. So an agency can bring in evidence to the GBI doing by 3 different ways. One way is the lockbox system, where they come in, they place their evidence in a lockbox with a submission form. And once they close that lockbox, it locks, so they can't open it again. An evidence receiving technician can open it from their side and retrieve the evidence, and then we give it a unique DOFS case number and assign it a request. They can also drop it off by hand, just hand it off to an evidence receiving technician, or they can bring in evidence using a certified courier.
Okay, and you said in this instance you received, it sounds like blood and urine?
Yes.
And as it relates to the testing that you do, for example, here on blood and urine, but on any of the testings that you've done previously, do you memorialize your findings and conclusions during a report?
Yes.
And did you do that here as it relates to this case?
Yes.
I want to show you what's been marked as State Exhibit 125. I just marked on that side, I apologize. But you recognize State Exhibit 125 minus the blue mark that I just put through the middle of it?
Yes.
All right, and can you tell the jurors how you recognize it and what it is?
It's a copy of their official report for what I'll call postmortem testing.
Okay, and it's a fair and accurate copy of the report that you did as it relates to your conclusions and findings in this case.
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, the state would tender what's been marked as State Exhibit 125 as evidence.
No objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted. You may publish.
Thank you. Mr. Malsecca, you said you received blood and urine. Can you tell the jurors who was the subject, or in this case, the victim, as it relates to the blood and urine that you received?
The name is Thomas Arnold.
Okay. And once you received Mr. Arnold's blood and urine from his autopsy, can you explain to the jurors the initial steps that you take as it relates to the testing that you performed?
Yes. So in this case, I performed just blood alcohol testing. And so what will happen is I'll get assigned a set of cases from a manager, and I make that into a run list. And then I will retrieve all the evidence from our cold storage. And then the items have a barcode on them, so I can scan for electronically for the chain of custody, so they show that they're in my possession. I will take all the evidence items, place them on a cart, and I'll put them in order based off of the evidence items. So, if we start off with evidence number 1, I'll go from 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth, and set that in order. For when I would test it, I will open each item one at a time. I'll make sure that the case number matches the vial or the little glass jar that I'm dispensing a sample of the blood into, and it matches my run list. I will dispense a sample into the vial, I will cap the vial, and then I'll put an aluminum frame on the vial and then crimp it so it's permanently sealed. And then I will place the tubes back into its packaging and heat seal it, meaning I melt the plastic packaging together so it can't be opened again, and then initial it, and then put that away and move on to the next item. And I'll do that for all the blood that I'm assigned for that case, or for that run. And then I'll do it again. So I'll take all the blood back out and put them in order, but this time I put them in descending order. So it'll be like from case number 10, case number 9, case number 8, and so forth. So I'll test them all again, but in descending order. And then I'll place both of those samples for each item onto our instrument. And the instrument is called a headspace gas chromatography mass spectrometry with the flame ionization detector, which is it's very long. We just call it a GC, or GC mass spec for short. This is what we use to get the concentration that I report out, and also the mass spec portion of the instrument is used for to identify that the alcohol I'm looking at is the alcohol that I'm supposed to be looking at. And then from there, I'll have the data to issue a report.
Okay. And is your work that you just described all the science that a lot of us probably went right over all of our heads? Is it peer reviewed?
Yes.
And can you explain to viewers a little bit about the peer review process as relates to testing that you did?
So once I make up my report, it goes into status called draft complete, and the next part it needs to be peer reviewed before it gets released. So another scientist that's trained in blood alcohol testing will look at my report and then look at all my data to make sure that they come up with the same conclusions that I did and that everything on my report is correct, and then it will get released out.
Okay. And prior to the release of your report, just to back up to your testing, I want to make sure that we all understand. So you take some of the blood that you received and you put it in I call it a big spinner thing, right?
Big spinner thing? No.
What do you call, how do you separate the blood from the alcohol? The alcohol from the blood, excuse me.
Well, the instrument actually does that. So what I do is I'll put it in a little tiny glass jar, a glass vial. I dispense 100 microliters, which is just a few drops of blood, really, in this jar, and it goes into the instrument. The first part of this instrument is the headspace, and what this does is basically an oven. It just heats up the vial, and ethyl alcohol is volatile. So what it's going to do is it's going to have a portion of it that's in the blood and a portion of it that is in the glass vial, but in the top above the liquid into the gas. And that portion of the ethanol is sampled from the gas phase into the instrument. So the blood doesn't go through the instrument at all. It's just the ethanol. And that's how we test it.
Okay. And once you did those testings, or that test, can you explain to the jurors what your findings and conclusions were as it relates to the BAC, or the blood alcohol, for Mr. Tom Arnold?
Ethyl alcohol result by gas chromatography is 0.242 plus or minus 0.012 grams per 100 milliliters.
All right. Can you tell me what do you mean, or what is 0.242? What does that mean? Can you explain to the jurors that?
So for every 100 milliliters of blood, it contains about 0.242 grams of alcohol, or ethyl alcohol.
And can you, based on your training and educational background experience, tell the jurors some of the effects that a person could be feeling if they have a blood alcohol content level of 0.242?
Yes. So ethyl alcohol is a CNS depressant, a central nervous system depressant. So it's going to slow down the information processing that goes from your brain onto your nervous system. So the first thing that will get affected is going to be judgment, your attention, your ability to control. It also increases inhibitions, meaning you're more likely to take risks. And then further on, when we get more to a point 24, is going to affect your peripheral vision, your acuity, So it's going to be harder to see things. It's going to be harder to see things from a distance and then something in front of you and make that adjustment. It could cause, at a 0.24, you can start causing drowsiness, make it harder for a person to stand, or it might impair their balance. And also it can affect motor sensory control, meaning that, for example, if you go to pick up something off of a table, you might miss grabbing it for the first time, trying to grab it. And also it can affect your emotions. It can destabilize your emotions, and it can also exacerbate your emotions as well.
Thank you, sir. I don't believe I have any further questions at this time. Okay. Defense counsel may have a few.
I don't have any questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Good morning. Just clarifying, because I may have misheard. I was taking notes. What were did you say there were 3 ways that you receive evidence?
Yes.
Okay. So I got the first way was the lockbox.
Mm-hmm.
The second way was you drop it off by hand. What was the third way?
By a courier.
Courier?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like a FedEx or UPS.
And so exactly how does that work with the courier?
The courier will drop it off into the evidence receiving area, where the evidence receiving will take the package, and it should have a submission form along with the evidence, so they know who it came from and what testing they want done on it.
And which method did you receive the blood alcohol for Mr. Arnold?
By lockbox.
Lockbox, okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please, you may be excused. Please call your next witness.
I think we'll call Mr. Michael McCarriger. Thank you, sir.
Certifying testimony should body the report of the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
You ready to see? Please take the first and last name and spell the quote for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Michael McCarriger. Last name is McCarriaGher.
Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Good, how you doing?
Can you tell the jurors, I'm sorry for the pause, how you are currently employed, sir?
Yes, I'm the manager of the trace evidence section at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Okay. And how long have you worked with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the GBI?
Almost 18 years.
Okay. And you said you currently are the manager of the trace section?
Yes, that's correct.
In your 18 years, have you always worked in that section?
I have.
And can you tell the jurors, what is the trace section?
The trace evidence examination section analyzes things that are microscopic in nature. The types of testing we do involve hairs, fiber, paint fragments, glass fragments, as well as gunshot primer residue.
Okay. And can you explain to the jurors a little bit about your educational background and training that you received to analyze those microscopic things that you just described?
Sure. I have a bachelor's degree in biology with a minor in chemistry from the State University of New York College at Geneseo. I have a master's of science in forensic science from Marshall University. When I got hired by the GBI in 2007, I was first trained to do gunshot primer residue examinations. It was about 8 months long. I also completed training programs for hair examinations, which was approximately a year, and glass examinations, which was approximately a year.
And when you, I guess, can you explain to the jurors when you started with the GBI, a little bit about, I guess, the roles and responsibilities that you played as it relates to the testing you did before you became the manager of that section?
Sure. For the first 6 or 7 years, I was a scientist on the bench. I worked cases in gunshot residue glass exams and hair exams. At about the 6-year mark, I became the assistant manager of the section for 3 or so years. Spent half my time working cases, half my time managing, and now as the manager of the section, I'm pretty much purely in management.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state will tender Mr. McCarter as an expert in trace evidence and hair examination.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
So declared.
Thank you, sir.
Now, we heard about this from a little bit from your colleagues before you testified, but can you explain to the jurors how you receive evidence as it relates to things that you're going to test in the trace evidence department?
Sure. The vast majority of the evidence that we receive at the crime laboratory comes in through what we call lockbox system. There is a wall that has a locker embedded in it, and it has doors on both sides. So the submitting agency can drop their evidence and the supporting documentation into the locker, close the door, and that can only be opened from the inside by an evidence receiving technician. Evidence receiving technician will take that evidence. They will start a chain of custody for it. They will take images of how it was received by the GBI. They will scan in all the supporting documentation like the submission forms, and then it gets routed to whatever section of the laboratory needs it to work, and that's how it comes up to me.
Okay. And when it comes to you or members of your department, can you explain to jurors some of the first steps as you take as part of your protocol and procedures in the trace section?
Depending on what the examination is, it may start with an evidence receiving or with a trace evidence technician. A technician's job, as far as hairs and fibers would go, would be to collect extraneous hairs and fibers off items of evidence and preserve them on segments of tape for later analysis. If this is what we're doing for that particular case, we usually send that item to the DNA or forensic biology section of the laboratory. They conduct their examinations, and the materials that we removed from that original parent item become a plan B of analysis.
Okay, and can you kind of describe or give examples to the jurors of the types of evidence that trace evidence technician would use the tape procedure to get hairs and fibers off from?
Sure. If it's an item of clothing or bed linens, that would be what my technician would tape lift, where you take a segment of clear packing tape and you put it on the surface of the item and lift it off. It's almost like not a lint roller, but you see what I'm saying. For other items of evidence that are smaller in nature, perhaps fingernail clippings, like that, they might just look at those underneath a low-powered microscope and remove with tweezers anything that they see, and then put it on a piece of tape.
And I want to direct your attention to GBI case number or DOFS case number 2022-1005581. Can you tell the jurors, did your section receive evidence as it relates to that GBI or DOFS case number?
Yes, we did.
Can you tell the jurors what evidence was received by your section in the GBI?
For hair examinations, it was a set of fingernail clippings.
Okay. And can you explain to the jurors, once those fingernail clippings were received, what testing or procedure as it relates to collecting trace evidence or that microscopic evidence that you described was done?
Trace evidence processing service was completed by one of my technicians, which would again involve her looking at the fingernail clippings underneath a low-powered microscope, removing any extraneous hairs and fibers, and putting them on tape for later analysis.
Okay. And was a report generated as it relates to the receiving of the evidence as well as the processing procedures that were performed?
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you what's been marked. I guess, Your Honor, I have a tender what's been marked as States Exhibit 126 and 127 evidence by way of stipulation by all parties.
So admitted.
Now, I want to show you those exhibits of 126 and 127. In States Exhibit 126, can you tell the jurors what are we looking at there?
This is what we call a case status update alerting the submitting agency that the collection that I just described was performed.
Okay. And then in States Exhibit 127, can you explain to the jurors what that report memorializes as it relates to the procedures that were performed?
At a later date, the potential hairs and fibers that were removed were viewed by a hair examiner, and no hairs were actually amongst that material, just fibers.
And the materials that were examined were what again?
Extraneous possible hairs and fibers that were removed from the fingernail clippings.
Okay. And the fingernail clippings of who, looking at your report, can you tell us?
Yeah, they were identified to the laboratory as the fingernail clippings of a Thomas Arnold.
And can you tell the jurors from looking at State's Exhibit 127 who those fingernail clippings or those items of evidence that were examined by the trace section were received from?
They were received by, in this instance, the Fulton County District Attorney Office, B. Higgins.
And ultimately, did those items...
Actually, I'd like to clarify. At a later date, the materials that were removed were submitted back to the laboratory by B. Higgins. The original submission of the fingernail clippings were from an N parent at the Atlanta Police Department. My apologies.
And just for clarification purposes, after the examination procedures you've described here today were performed by a member of your section, were any hairs or fibers located that could further testing could be done for, like you said, lab purposes?
It was looked at by a hair examiner. No hairs were present.
I believe that is all my questions. Defense counsel may have a few for you.
Sure.
Just for clarification, the original submission you said by N parent
Yes,
was the date of that was March 3rd of 2022, correct?
that is correct.
But at that time, the clippings were not tested for trace evidence.
No, they were eventually looked at in June of that year, so approximately 3 months later.
Okay, and then the report that you referenced later, that report, what is the date that the second report was done?
The hair examination on the materials removed was, the report's dated September 20th, 2024.
Okay, thank you.
One moment, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, how about you?
Great, thanks.
Now, you said that you initially, well, there was clear packaging tape that was initially used to retrieve the fibers and any hair follicles.
Yeah, it would have been an examiner, one of my technicians, looking through a microscope at the fingernail clippings and then taking tweezers and removing anything that they saw and moving it over to a piece of clear packing tape.
Okay. And how long would, I guess, that last, whatever they saw and they removed to the packaging tape, how long would it remain on the packaging tape?
Indefinitely, I would assume.
When you say you would assume, can you,
I mean, if no one messed with it and tampered with it, it would, those items would stay on those segments of tape. That would be the point of locking them down there.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Anything further of this witness?
And as it relates to this case, you have no knowledge of any tampering with any sort of evidence as it relates to what you testified to, right?
No, no, sir.
Yes, that's it, Your Honor.
All right, sir, you may be excused. Let's take a 5-minute break. We've been going about an hour. Thank you.
Your Honor.
Recording stopped.
No, I was like, what is she saying? I said, is this a, I thought it was a quick thing. Oh, no, I figured it out. I said, which bag? And I'm standing there, which bag does she want? I said, who's gonna die? I was like, come now, she ain't got a bad day of these people in here.
I started to feel it. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. You are quite welcome. I had to laugh at myself.
It's usually like, yeah. She went that way. That's all I know.
Are you representing the other defendant?
No, I'm with Mr. Norman.
Oh, okay.
Valeria Hemingway?
I'm sorry?
Valeria Hemingway.
Valeria Hemingway. Thank you very much.
So, hold on one second.
I'm sorry?
I think more, we still have more.
Oh, today is a GBI.
I think just one more person. After that, it should be.
I got it at the Inman Park Festival. I picked out like this lady, like she had like a junk. Not, I didn't even say junk boots, but she had all these like brooches, and so I was like, oh, I'll pick out like a couple and see if we can make a deal. No, and I was like, okay, I will take the one. And I put and have all these back. She wanted like $40 for 3. That's what I said. I said, that's insane. You're not going to sell it.
That off of eBay.
Right?
We're going to be done today.
I hope so. I'm gonna address the lead counsel.
Okay. I just want to know so I can work on make sure that I can tell Rupert to go back and work on y'all's charges.
Probably not. I think we'll rest tomorrow morning. It's my best guess.
Okay.
So they told me this morning.
I think it'll be 1 or 2 witnesses tomorrow. That'll be very quick. But I think before lunch tomorrow.
Okay.
I did.
So she just said
How was it?
It was good. Yeah, we bought some art and yeah.
Were you there on Saturday?
No, we went on Sunday. Yeah.
I have worried Larry.
I decided to
We're not
wait.
in the new
Yeah, you might laugh. You might not.
They have the best gyros there, so my husband and I go every year. Gyro.
I saw something this morning.
Ballistics experts.
I like the
narrow down the range of possible. When they came across, he said, do you know what the fire was about? Right, I mean, is that when you got out of position? And what was this?
April, how was your weekend?
I have no idea.
It's good.
Blood guys are more interested in him.
I don't ever turn
Blood
up.
guy.
I want to turn over. I had to make my legs get up. My
That's
legs,
what my weekends do. That's what I did.
I know it pop right up. 6 a.m. today.
Yeah.
I went to a seminar dealing with preparedness,
dragging for sure,
preparedness, like gardening, wills, estates. You know where to store your, where to store all your important paperwork. So,
You went to church, right?
no, it wasn't.
No,
So there is a I did go on Sunday, but there is a young lady that God connected me with in December that created this software because of what happened to her uncle. Her uncle died. They didn't know where his paperwork was, and they were getting ready to cremate him. And his attorney called because he saw the ad in the paper, you know, the statement, the thing in the paper that said that he had died. And so they had already had a funeral for him. So they had to call the funeral home like he was already at the place where they stopped the cremation because that's not what my uncle wanted. So she said they had to have a second funeral. And so after that came Airtight by HE, which is a cloud-based encrypted, I'm gonna call it a cloud-based program or whatever, that stores, I think she says had up to 2,500 files. So you can upload anything you want to upload, and then whoever your heirs are, you select, I want them to have this file, or that file, or this pic, that pic, and you send it to them.
Very cool.
Isn't that neat?
Wow.
And so every year, she said, once you get your will updated, she said every year it's going to send you a reminder, hey, you need to update your will. She got all like little, I'll send it to you. It was really, it's on cutting edge, and the lady lives here, and it's less than a year old. I thought it was cool too. I was like, I need to introduce it to all the attorneys. I was like, how do I do that?
I need to get my life together.
That's why I was sitting there saying, I said, I need to get my life together.
I need to
And so in
know
that
where
same
my things are
software,
going.
It'll help you write your will.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have my stuff together because I don't think about it. It's like dealing in the present, not
My kids are getting all their money now, like between his wedding and school and like, I'm about to leave them $0.
Well, you better put it in writing, especially when you have been married more than once, having kids, several.
Yeah, it's like things come
It's a lot going on within that, you know, like I begged my dad, like, what's your story? What are you doing? You know, you were about dead the last time I kind of interjected myself and God saved your life, but the lady probably wanted you dead, and I wouldn't even let her, I wouldn't let her stay overnight. I stayed overnight while I was in hospital at all. And so my dad came and stayed with me to recover from his sickness twice.
I mean, my dad didn't have anything, and we didn't get anything, but there's something out there. But I'm just,
you know, and I'm the oldest, and I don't want to.
Oh,
I told
argue
my mom
when my
that
parents
I would probably have to take the silent road. Not that I would want to, because I'm the first. And you don't have anything in writing, and you refuse to put anything in writing. So by law, we all get a piece of the pie.
the only thing I adjust is my life insurance. If I do something big for one, I try to go in and change the percentage enough that it makes up for the other ones. You know what I mean? Like if I gave you a house down payment,
well, I'm going to leave my nephew everything, but I just need to put it in writing. And then putting it in a trust, and then or get a trust and funding the trust, and it's just a lot to learn.
And it's stuff that nobody really wants to think about.
I don't want to think about that, you know. And she even talked about that, like I don't, because I thought me writing it means that I was saying, yeah. But then, like, I had my friend that unexpectedly left here with babies, and with a 10-year-old. It just it puts things in a different perspective as you get older. But some people use it to upload their kids' transcripts, medical, everything, because it's encrypted. I thought it was, and it's like $10, no, $12 a month, and
I guess we don't like to think about it either, though, because my mom is always trying to give her death packet. Every couple of years, she'll pop up with an envelope and be like,
So here's the thing. So with that, you can either upload the documents for her, and she can give access to who she wants to have access to, but she has to send it, or she can upload something that says the envelope is in this drawer, blah 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 blah, and send it to all the kids or whoever she wants to have it, and y'all go over there to her house and get it. So it's just different ways.
Judy asked for the live, but it's the same.
It's the same one, yeah. Or Zoom.
I don't know. For the
She can
Zoom.
either do that. Atlanta News First is doing it live. Fox 5 is doing
But
it live.
it's the same Zoom that you sent last week, right?
Yeah, it's the same. I haven't changed anything.
I was annoyed with the photo that she put up and asked to take down, but she left
I was
out.
like, that's not even professional.
I asked her to take it down, and then it took.
No, I hit her when I hit her, so nobody saw it.
Oh, I could still see it though on the screen.
You could see it, but I couldn't see it on mine.
No, I could still see it up there. I could still see it here.
Could you see it on the feed?
Oh, I don't know, but I told her to remove it. It took her too long.
Did you rest this weekend?
Great, thank you so much.
I know.
It'll be less boring.
Her mother goes to my church. That was what I was gonna wait and tell you.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know how she was related to you. Because I went on Vivian's page when Pastor announced it yesterday, and it just we were all. It was one of those moments.
Please be seated. April, what you do with that coffee?
Is there somebody in front?
Bring them out, please. Who's your next witness, please?
Destiny Mason.
Recording in progress.
Let me have the jury, please. Please call your next witness. Yeah, did you?
Another weekend.
I went to a big event for the Humane Society.
Oh, how was that?
All these people,
All right for the jury.
all these people spent tons of money for animals.
My sister-in-law was there.
It's called a Bow Wow Brunch.
Yeah.
I was there.
She had a table there. Works for Ann.
Oh, okay.
Who is she?
Emma Body's her name.
Right. But it was very well attended.
She loves puppies. So.
Yeah.
All jury present, count, Your Honor.
Please be seated. Thank you. Please call your next witness.
David Palmer, Destiny Mason.
Yes.
State your first and last name, and spell it both for the record, please.
Destiny, Destinee, Mason, Mason.
Good morning, Ms. Mason.
Good morning.
Can you tell the jurors how you are currently employed?
I am a forensic serologist.
And where are you forensic serologist?
I work for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in the Division of Forensic Science, also known as the State Crime Lab, in the Forensic Biology section.
Okay. How long have you been a employee or a member of
4 years.
Okay, and in those 4 years, have you always worked in the forensic serology area or section of the GBI?
Yes, I have.
Can you explain to the jurors a little bit about your daily job responsibilities and duties as a forensic serologist at the GBI?
As a forensic serologist, I analyze evidence for the presence of body fluids such as blood, semen, and saliva.
And can you explain to the jurors a little bit about your educational background and the training that you received either in school as well as with the GBI in order to perform the testing of a forensic serologist?
I received my Bachelor's of Science degree in biology from the University of California, Riverside in 2012. At GBI, I've undergone extensive training. This includes attending lectures, presentations, demonstrations, working with mock samples, completing oral and written exams, completing competency and proficiency testing, as well as a mock trial.
Okay. And can you tell me what specifically is forensic serology and what are you, I guess, testing for in the items of evidence that you received?
For the items of evidence, we're testing for body fluids, like I said, blood, semen, or saliva.
Okay. And at this time, I'm going to state with tender Ms. Destiny Mason as an expert in forensic serology.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
So declared.
And Ms. Mason, we've heard from some of your colleagues from the GBI here today. Do you receive evidence in your section as it relates to the testing you do in forensic serology in a similar fashion that they described through a lockbox, courier, and things of that nature?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors as it relates to GBI case number or DOFS case number 2022-1005581, did you receive evidence as it relates to that case?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell the jurors what evidence did you receive in relation to that unique or specialized case number as it relates to this case?
I received a Minute Maid bottle.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors after you perform your analysis and your testing, do you memorialize your findings and conclusions always in a report?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And did you do that as it relates to this case?
Yes, I did.
I want to show you with pre-marked for identification purposes, State Exhibit 128. And if you'll take a look at that, do you recognize State Exhibit 128?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell the jurors how you recognize it and what it is?
It is a report from DOFS case number 2022-100-5581. It is a report I created for the saliva analysis I conducted.
Okay. And is that the analysis you conducted on what you previously referenced as the Minute Maid bottle?
Yes, it is.
Is that report in State Exhibit 128 a fair and accurate copy of the report that you actually created and memorialized your findings and conclusions?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the state of the tender was marked as State's Exhibit 128 to evidence.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted, you may publish.
Thank you, Judge. Now,
Hey.
Ms. Mason, I want to make sure.
You sure?
Yeah. I want to show you what's already been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 91. And do you recognize State's Exhibit 91 if you want to look inside?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And what is what's already been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 91?
It's a Minute Maid bottle.
Okay. And is that the Minute Maid bottle that you received and ultimately did the testing that you're here for today?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, once you receive that bottle, can you describe for the jurors a little bit about the first steps that you take and the processes and procedures that you do for your testing for your saliva?
For saliva analysis, I will take 2 swabs, one wet, one dry, and I will swab the mouth area of the bottle, so the inside and the outside of the mouth area, as well as the inside of the cap. Then I will take small cuttings from those two swabs and add chemicals and observe if a color change occurs. If it is positive, it turns a blue color. If it is negative, it turns a clear color.
Let me ask this question. How come you take this is a swabbing or swab, one wet and one dry? Why do you do that?
To retrieve these possible saliva on the evidence.
And you said once you take those swabbings, you said you have to take a cutting?
Take small cuttings from both swabs, yes.
And then once you've got your the cuttings that you're going to do your testing on, can you describe for the jurors what is done in order to get the blue or remain clear result?
So we'll add the cuttings to a small tube, and then we'll add chemicals to that tube. And if saliva is present on the small cuttings, it'll turn a blue color. If it is negative, it will not turn a color. It will just remain clear.
Can you describe for the jurors what kind of chemicals are you using or putting in the tube with the cutting in order to get a positive result for saliva or a result that remains clear where indicates there's no presence of saliva?
It is a blue tab that we add to prepare a solution, and then we add it to the cuttings. And if saliva is present, it will release the blue color into the tube.
Okay. And in the testing that you performed here for this case on the cuttings that you described from the swabs from the inside and outside of the rim of the bottle of the cap, what were the conclusions you were able to come to as it relates to your testing?
The Minute Maid bottle was negative for the presence of saliva.
Okay. And on your report, it says fails to reveal the presence of amylase and enzymatic constituent of saliva.
Yes, that is correct.
That's what you're looking for?
Yes, that is correct.
And as it relates to the evidence that you received for this case, did that conclude the testing that you were assigned to perform in relation to the unique or the DOFS case number we talked about here today?
Yes, that is.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Mason. I don't have any further questions, but
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is possible to recover saliva from a plastic water or plastic bottle. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And so if there was a similar, and let me just back up, that's a typical 20-ounce drink container, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And if there was a similar container left on the crime scene, it may have contained testable saliva.
That is possible, yes.
All right. And the date of your report was September 25th of 2024, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you had not submitted any report prior to that?
For this case, no, I did not.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, you said your report date was September 25th, 2024,
Yes, that is correct.
and what you received was a Minute Maid bottle.
Yes, that is correct.
Did you receive any cotton swabs?
No, I did not.
How long would you say that saliva might last on an object?
I can't give you a specific amount of days, but it can last on there a while.
What's a while?
It could be up to years, depending on how the fluid was deposited on the item.
How would it have to have been deposited on the item?
Like drinking from the bottle or spitting on the bottle.
Would it last longer if it had been swabbed and preserved versus just having the bottle itself?
No, if there's saliva present, and there was nothing to, there was no possible, like, the top was on, the lid was on, and there was no water present or anything like that, it should still be on the bottle.
They said the top was on, no water present. How long would water last where you would notice there was water on the bottle?
I don't know. The water dries, so I can't give you an exact amount of days.
But if there was water on the bottle, it might affect it.
It's possible, yes.
Is there a specific proper procedure to preserve saliva on an object?
Well, we typically ask for the agency to put the item in a brown paper bag and store it in a cool place.
And when you received the item, where was it stored?
We have a locker that we place evidence in the forensic biology section.
And was that a cool place?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Very briefly, in this instance, when you received the evidence, you received it with the top or the lid on, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And I guess, in most instances, does water dry pretty quickly regardless?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And did you receive the evidence in a brown paper bag as you described?
Yes, I did.
And based on when you received the evidence, was there any evidence of any tampering or anything of that as relates to destruction of evidence?
During my testing, no, I didn't observe any tampering.
And let me ask you this question. When you received the evidence, was the Minute Maid bottle, did it have any lemonade left, or was it an empty bottle?
If I remember correctly, it was empty.
No further questions?
May this witness be excused?
Nothing further from the state. So yes.
You may be excused. Thank you. Please call your next witness.
The state calls Sergeant Parent.
Thank you. Morning, Sergeant.
Morning.
Up here.
Sorry, I heard it coming from behind me. That got me a little off there.
Raise your right hand for me. Referring to testimony you're about to report to the truth,
I do.
and you see, you place your first and last name and spell it both for the record.
Yes. Sergeant Nichelle Parent, Nichhellepparent.
Thank you so much, Sergeant Parent. Good morning. And can you please tell us, where are you currently employed?
Currently employed with the City of Atlanta Police Department. I am now a supervisor, sergeant for Zone 5, which is a downtown district for here, over their quality of life unit.
Now, how long have you been with City of Atlanta Police Department?
I just hit my 15th anniversary a couple months ago.
Happy anniversary. And were you in the same position back in February of 2022?
I was not.
Okay. What position were you in then?
I was currently assigned at that time to the homicide division as a detective.
And tell us, what does a homicide detective with that division of, or the homicide division of City of Atlanta, what do they do?
So there's several things that encompass the homicide division. We handle adult missing persons, and we respond out to homicide cases. We either are assigned a case based on where we fall in a rotation of assigned cases, or if we're not actively working a case that's now assigned. Like, for example, if I was assigned a case today, I would be the primary. If you're not the primary on that case, then you're assisting other detectives on their crime scenes on their case that they're assigned.
Now, during your time as a homicide detective, did you become involved in an investigation involving a homicide of Thomas Arnold back on February 26th of 2022?
I was.
Okay. And were you assisting or were you primary on that case?
No, I was the primary investigator on that case.
Now, what was the location of that incident?
So that was in the Inman Park area. It was where Bernina and Elizabeth Street meet at the Beltline. And in particular, the actual crime scene is just slightly up on a Beltline path, and there's a little rock, dirt, gravel, if you will, circular area for people to hang out. It's called Beach Circle.
And what county is that location?
It's in Fulton County.
Now, turning to that Saturday morning, February 26, 2022, what time roughly did you arrive on scene?
I arrived a little before 8 a.m.
Now, were you the first officer at all to arrive on the scene?
No, I was at the time assigned to the evening shift. So because I was next in the rotation, I received a phone call from the day shift investigators over in homicide and stated that there was a new case up and that I was next in the rotation and to go ahead and come in. So I came in.
Now, is it typical that that initial investigator would provide you some background on how they got the call?
Correct. So the initial detective who notified me advised that they had a 911 call and a Zone 6 officer, so that Zone 6 is where Inman Park area is, responded to a call of a body found up on Beach Circle.
And in that background, was there any information regarding a Rachel Whitlock or Jacqueline Garner who were jogging during that time?
Yes, so those were the 911 callers. They had been walking the Beltline in the morning, and once the sun was coming up, things are much brighter, obviously. They noticed a man laying down who appeared to be deceased in the Beach Circle area and called 911 and stood by for police to respond.
Now, when you arrived on the scene, what did you find at that point? Walk us through that.
I arrived on scene, and the area's, got a number of people going about their daily business, either going to work or, going or coming home from work, exercising on the Beltline, things of that nature. I walked up and I did notice Mr. Arnold's body laying on the ground, and he had his hand in his pocket. There was a shell casing on the ground, and we were confirmed that he was in fact deceased.
Now, I understand you're talking about the area you said you arrived just before 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Are you pretty familiar with that area?
Yes.
Okay. Would it be just as busy, people exercising, going to work, all that around, say, 10:50, 11 p.m.?
Depends on the day of the week. Typically, middle of the week is not going to be as busy as, let's say, a evening on the weekend.
And when you arrived, you said that you observed Mr. Arnold. He had one hand in his pocket. Were there any contents found on or items found on Mr. Arnold?
Yes, what was interesting was that Mr. Arnold still had his watch on. He still had his phone with him. He still had his wallet with credit cards and money. He still had all his personal identification on him. None of those items had been taken.
Did you locate any car keys on his person?
No, there were no car keys on his person.
Now, did you speak to any witnesses when you arrived on the scene?
I did. There was two gentlemen, Mr. Steve Carlin and Sidney Ward, who came to the crime scene while we were processing it. and advised that they were longtime friends and had been with Mr. Arnold the night before.
And in detailing, I guess, that night before, were they able to provide you with some locations tied to that evening before?
They were. They gave a detailed account of the evening. They started the evening meeting with Mr. Arnold over at Hampton and Hudson Restaurant, which is also in the Inman Park area. Then they went to, following Hampton and Hudson, they went to Pure Taqueria and were there meeting with, socializing with their bar friends. The staff there affectionately knew them as the Three Amigos. They were regulars there.
Now, on the screen in front of you, I'm going to display what's been previously tendered into evidence at State's Exhibit 5, so we can kind of orient ourselves to this area. Now, looking at State's Exhibit 5, you were talking about some of the locations, Hampton and Hudson, Pure Taqueria. We have a touchscreen feature. Second, set it up for you. Okay. If you could please orient us to Pure Taqueria.
Pure Taqueria is going to be right here, this little corner of the building.
Okay. And Hampton and Hudson, that location, where would that be?
That's going to be, and I kind of can't see it because of the bottom there, but it's going to be right around this area.
Okay. And which street are we on at that point?
That point, you're on North Highland, yes, North Highland Ave.
And then Pure Taqueria we see is kind of on a corner. What two streets do we have there?
So you have North Highland Ave, and then you have Elizabeth that kind of makes this turn.
And then if we are looking at that Beltline area, where can you circle that area for us?
So this is one of the Beltline trails, and it comes up this way. Then you have these connection paths right here. This is a Beltline access path where it takes you further down and over to a different area. And there's several other little paths that you can break through to get to where it comes into different streets. But your main Beltline is going to follow here, and then there's a skate park right over here on the other side of the interstate.
Now, specifically, following the information provided from Mr. Ward and Mr. Carlin, were you able to obtain any video footage connected to the locations they stopped at?
Yes. So we went to, myself and various assistants from the homicide unit went to check on video footage to confirm, their accounts of where they went and kind of establish a basic timeline for the evening for the victim. And so we went to Hampton and Hudson, and they were familiar with the three of them. Again, they're regulars in the community. They were able to provide footage from the bar showing that they were there. We then went to Pure Taqueria, and the staff remembers them there. We attempted to obtain the footage from the Pure Taqueria, and at that time they had just had an issue with their DVR system, and it was corrupted. They did provide us the DVR system with an attempt to see if there was someone in our electronics division that could try to extract it, but they were not successful.
Was been previously tendered into evidence as State's Exhibit 4, A, B, and C. On that same screen in front these, so just bear with me. Now, looking at State's Exhibit 4, is this the footage that was provided by Hampton and Hudson of that evening?
It is.
Okay. And looking at the timestamp at the top there, can you orient us as to the date and time?
It'll be February 25th, 2022, 7:25 p.m.
And in that footage, we see Mr. Arnold, Mr. Ward, Mr. Carlin, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did this align with, I guess, kind of their recitation of what happened that evening?
Correct.
We'll go to State's Exhibit 4C. And just press and play on State's Exhibit 4C. Are we still able to see those same individuals in State's Exhibit 4C?
Yes.
Okay. And again, can you orient us to the date and time associated with this footage?
That's going to be February 25th, 2022, 10:14 p.m.
And again, did this align with Mr. Ward and Mr. Carlin's explanation of what had occurred earlier in that evening?
Yes, it did.
Now, as far as Cure Taqueria, that's where they headed after this footage?
Correct.
Okay. And you walked us through, they provided a DVR, but you weren't able to get any footage from that?
That's correct.
Okay. Did they provide you with any documentation?
Yes, they provided us with a receipt from Mr. Arnold's bill that evening that he paid with a credit card.
I'm going to place on the screen what has been previously entered in the evidence as State's Exhibit 7. Now, looking at State's Exhibit 7 as we scroll down, is this that same receipt you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the date and time associated with this receipt?
February 25th, 2022, 10:11 p.m.
And again, when it came to their system for Pure Taqueria, they had mentioned that there were some issues and they were getting a new system. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, as far as this receipt goes, how were you able to corroborate that it did in fact belong to Mr. Arnold or was associated with Mr. Arnold?
So, as stated previously, Mr. Arnold's wallet and credit cards were still on his person at the time he was found. So we were able to confirm on the American Express, which is the Amex you see, the last 4 digits matched his credit card on his person.
What are the last four we see here?
3008.
Thank you, and I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129. 129 any point did you photograph and memorialize the contents of Mr. Arnold's wallet?
Yes.
I'm going to approach you with a copy of State's Exhibit 129. You could take a look for me. Let me know if you recognize it.
Yes, so those items, what I did was I took the contents of his wallet out and scanned them on our photocopier in the office, the fronts and backs of the items to include the cash that he had with him, so documenting all the contents of his wallet.
And is State's 129 a true and accurate copy of that Xerox that you made of all the contents?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would tender State's Exhibit 129.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted, you may publish.
On the screen in front of you, we will begin with page 1 of State's Exhibit 129. You're smaller so we can see the full first page. Now, what do we have here in State's Exhibit 129? Page 1.
We have Mr. Arnold's driver's license, Georgia issue driver's license, and we have his American Express credit card.
And with that driver's license, were you able to get a confirmed address, home address for Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
What was that?
881 Ralph McGill.
And make it a little easier for you to read. And for date of birth associated with Mr. Arnold.
10/29/1961.
And that 981 Ralph McGill address, what county is that located in?
Fulton County.
Thank you. And I'm going to scroll down to page 2 of State's Exhibit 129. What are we looking at here?
That's the back of the earlier American Express credit card.
And what are the last 4 digits?
3008.
Now, as they are talking about their evening, I know that Mr. Ward and Mr. Carlin told you it started there at Hampton and Hudson. They then went to Pure Taqueria. Did they tell you about the last time they saw Mr. Arnold?
They did. They stated that Mr. Arnold had been complaining about some soreness and stiffness in his back, and that he was, instead of catching the lift ride with them, that he would, since he lived such a short distance away from where they were, he thought that if he walked home, it might relieve some of the pain in his back before he went to bed.
And if Mr. Arnold, you being familiar with that area, if Mr. Arnold were to walk home from Pure Taqueria to that 981 Ralph McGill Boulevard address, what path would he typically take?
So he would, from Pure Taqueria, which was on the corner, and then there's Elizabeth Street that runs down that connects to the Beltline. So he would walk down Elizabeth Street towards the Beltline, and then at that point, that's when that street that curves around Bernina intersects it. And then from that point, there's one of the entryways to the Beltline path. So he would have gotten onto the Beltline path, and then to go towards his home, he wouldn't go underneath the bridge right there. He would take the access path, which takes you further down and then around over to where his house would be.
And would he pass by that beach circle?
Absolutely, yes.
Now, and I apologize if you already said this, did Mr. Ward and Mr. Carlin explain how they got home that evening?
Yes, they did. They advised that they took hired a lift car to come pick them up, rideshare service.
And did they provide you with any documentation related to that lift ride?
Yes. In our interviews with them, they were able to produce an electronic receipt showing that they had taken the lift ride.
I'm going to show you on the screen what's been previously entered in evidence of State's Exhibit 6A that we see here, and then subsequently 6B that we have pictured here. Are those the copies of the lift receipt?
Yes, so they were able to pull it up directly from their app and show it to me during our interview, that they took the driver picked him up and then where he ended up dropping them off.
Trying to make it a little bit larger. What was the location of the pickup for Mr. Ward and Mr. Carter?
300 North Highland Avenue.
And did we see that on State's Exhibit 5, that map earlier?
Yes,
Where would we be typically if we're at that location?
Pure Taqueria.
Okay. And what was the time of pickup?
10:33 p.m.
Now, as a part of homicide investigations, do you typically work to rule out other possible manners of death in certain situations?
Yes. In this particular situation, when the medical examiner came out on scene, as we were processing the initial scene with Mr. Arnold, we look for any signs of trace evidence as well as trying to establish a cause of death. Mr. Arnold had blood coming out of the nose area, right around the face, and the medical examiner noted that there was a hole on the upper part of his mouth that he was able to locate during the initial examination on scene.
Were there also any visible, I guess, injuries to the back of his head or the head?
Yes, there was some injury noted by the medical examiner at that time.
So what would you do, and what did you do in this case, working to rule out any other possibilities?
So given there wasn't a direct visible at that time notice of, for example, shots going into the body that you can visibly see, and the only visible defect that we could see was to the back of the head and through the upper part of the mouth, we wanted to rule out that it wasn't a suicide. So that continued in with our conversation with Mr. Ward, Mr. Carlin, to find out if Mr. Arnold had any indication that he might have been suicidal, that there wasn't anything that may have been missed. So in addition to that, following my interviews with them, I obtained a search warrant for Mr. Arnold's home, which they let me into the house. They granted access to that, and I was able to search the premises of Mr. Arnold's home to rule out signs of suicide. And by doing such, we take everything into consideration. So on the front porch were fresh Amazon packages that hadn't been brought inside. He had a vehicle parked in the driveway. We go inside and he's got his financial paperwork near his computer. We've glanced at that. There was nothing to indicate that he was in any sort of financial trouble. We looked for evidence of firearms and bullets. We could not find any.
And as far as firearms and bullets, did you find a firearm on the scene?
No, we did not.
Okay. So nothing in his hands, like a firearm in his hand?
No, there was no firearm in his hand.
And so, did you also, during this investigation, obtain any access to Mr. Arnold's phone?
Yes, because his phone had not been taken, we were able to get his phone and download the data off the phone for processing.
And any indications of suicidal ideations or anything of that sort?
No, there was nothing, no messages, videos, pictures, nothing sent out or received or even looking up suicide.
So after speaking to family and friends, reviewing the contents of his phone, reviewing his home, and the crime scene as it was, what was your conclusion as far as an investigator, homicide investigator?
So at that point, we concluded that it was unlikely to be suicide. Based on that, it wasn't until the autopsy that occurred on the 28th that it was further confirmed that it was homicide and not suicide.
Now, during your investigation, were you able to gather any information on when Mr. Arnold's death may have occurred?
So between the time that we got the official confirmation from the medical examiner's office that it was in fact a homicide and not a suicide, we had also been canvassing the area because there's a plethora of residences, businesses in that area, tons of people that, you know, live, work, play in the same area. So we canvassed the area looking for witnesses that may have been present that night, as well as looking for any camera footage that may have been available to us. So we looked for cameras, making contact with the businesses, the property owners, to obtain any and all footage that they had.
And was there any information provided regarding a fire alarm that would have occurred during that evening?
Yes, so a 911 call that was electronically emitted was from the apartment complex right there that backs up to Elizabeth and Bernina. That fire alarm call came into our 911 dispatch, and they dispatched a fire unit out.
And with is there a time specifically tied to that dispatch?
Yes.
And between the dispatch, were there any reports or any information of a gunshot heard around that time as well?
So not initially. Initially, we just had people reporting they heard the fire alarms, and that drew their attention to the complex more than anything else.
Did that give you any sense of a rough timeline to look at?
Yes. So we knew if the fire department was there, there was going to be a large presence of emergency personnel in the area. And then we were able to use that time frame, find the fire department arriving on scene on camera, and then tracking with additional footage we obtained over the next couple days the path of travel of Mr. Arnold, and we're able to start coinciding when he may have entered the Beltline area.
So now we are at the next day from the report of, or when you first found the body of Mr. Arnold, is that correct?
Couple days ahead, yes, yes.
And so turning your attention specifically to February 27th of 2022, did you obtain any footage from residents in that area?
Yes, so we obtained, there was a camera right there on the corner of Elizabeth and Bernina. It was a corner unit, and it had a Wise camera, which is, you know, like a Ring camera, but just a different brand. A Wise camera that angled out in such a way that you could see part of the Beltline path, and you could see Bernina heading down, and you could see a large portion of Elizabeth Street. So basically, he was encompassing anybody that might have walked up to his back door.
And were you able to obtain that footage?
Yes.
For how long of a period of time?
So he had minute by minute footage recorded and saved over the course of several days.
And did those days include February 25th, 2022?
It did.
I am going to show you State's Exhibit 9, which has been previously tendered into evidence. It should come up on that screen in front of you. And let me ask this while I'm pulling up. Were you able to view that footage?
Yes.
And in that footage, were you able to, at any point, observe Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Using that touchscreen feature, Sergeant, I want you just to orient us as to what streets we're looking at here, since it appears we have a bit of an intersection.
Okay. So this right here is Elizabeth Street. Down a bit of a ways off camera here is Pure Taqueria and North Highland Ave. And then this street right here is Bernina. And then you have the Beltline access trail running right here.
Perfect. And if somebody is walking to enter into that Beltline trail, where would that be?
So it's going to be just slightly off camera in this area. So they would have to continue up just a little bit of a ways to enter the little area path.
Clear the markings in. Press play. We're getting a timestamp. February 25th, 2022, 22 hours, 25 minutes, and 0 seconds. And Detective, are we seeing much foot traffic the same it would have been that morning, that Saturday morning you were out there?
No.
And Sergeant, we just saw an individual walk past the screen. Were you able to identify who that individual was?
Yes. So based on the footage that we had seen at the Hampton and Hudson, we were able to identify him as Mr. Arnold.
And what is that timestamp? And I'm trying to move my cursor so you can see it. But what is the timestamp associated with this point?
I think I have a pop-up blocking me.
One second.
Okay. February 25th, 2022, and 22:25, which is 10:25 p.m.
Now, Detective, or excuse me, Sergeant, I'm getting it right. What is a VIC camera?
We call them VIC because it's much easier to say than Video Integration Center cameras. It kind of becomes a mouthful when you're on, daily patrol. Hey, let me see the Video Integration Center cameras. So we call them the VIC cameras for short. And the VIC cameras are cameras installed throughout the city of Atlanta that are monitored over at our communications center by a number of officers that also that record real time and footage is able to be saved and used for investigations as it comes up, as they're needed.
Now, particularly looking at the corner that you talked about earlier near Pure Taqueria, that corner of North Highland and Elizabeth Street, is there a big camera set up in that area?
There is. It's across the street and adjacent to the Pure Taqueria.
And were you able to obtain footage from that particular area?
I was.
Okay. Did you preserve that and include it in your case file?
I did.
Did you have a chance to look at that footage and also name to State Exhibit 130 prior to your testimony today?
Yes.
True and accurate copy?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, the state would tender State's Exhibit 130 as the North Highland and Elizabeth camera footage.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted, you may publish.
Now, in that camera footage of that particular area, which will come up in just a moment, Sergeant, but particularly looking at the 10:33 time frame specifically, were you able to find anything that corroborated with Mr. Carlin and Mr. Ward's explanation of the event?
Yes. So the three exit Pure Taqueria, and you see Mr. Arnold start walking down Elizabeth. And then you see Mr. Carlin and Mr. Ward standing outside. And then you see a blue car which is presumed to be the lift car picking them up, and then they leave the area.
Second, that pesky block will disappear. Okay, there we have it. Now, looking again at State's Exhibit 130, before I begin playing, I just want you to orient us again using that touchscreen feature of the streets and the notable location.
Okay, so this is, you can see by the sign here, this is pure taqueria. This is North Highland Ave, and this is Elizabeth Street.
Here are those drawings. Press play. We're at timestamp 10:33:30 right now. Walk us through what we're seeing of note right here.
So you see a blue car that's pulling up, and it'll stop. And at this point, usually it's the app. The driver has to notify that he's there along with his GPS, and then the person who's requested the ride has to receive the notification and then confirm that the car that is in their app and the driver that's showing up in their app is the person in which they're getting in the car.
And then the direction that we see this car driving off into, pausing the video now at 10:34:31 p.m. Is that in the same or opposite direction of that Beltline entrance area?
No, at this point, it's going way past the Beltline entrance.
And the timestamp we have here is around 10:33. The timestamp we saw on the lift receipt was about 10:33. Is that consistent with Mr. Arnold heading off on his journey home before they had left?
Correct.
Now, were there any additional big cameras that provided useful in your investigation here?
Yes, so along the Beltline, there's several cameras at multiple points because it's a well-traveled area. You've got kids, you have elderly, you have citizens of all ages, and it is a vast network now in the city that eventually will connect the entire city. But we have the department has cameras located at multiple points along the Beltline to record any kind of incidents that may occur.
And as far as the specific cameras in that area tied to the skate park or Freedom Parkway, were you able to obtain camera angles there?
Yes, so there was a camera on the Elizabeth and Bernina side. There's a camera that shows people walking up to and under the bridge that goes under the highway. It shows people coming in from two different angles. It shows looking as people go through the bridge to the other side. And then on the other side of the bridge is the Willoughby Way skate park. So you can skateboard, BMX, scooter. There's a camera over there that also monitors that area. And then it looks back the other direction.
And that footage, were you able to retain a copy and include it in your case file?
Yes.
And did you have a chance to look at that footage prior to today?
Yes.
And true and accurate copy that you viewed in State's Exhibit 131?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would tender State's Exhibit 131.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted, you may publish.
Now, before we take a look at that, I want to just go through everything that occurred, this being on February 28th of 2022. So on February 28th, you're able to obtain that WISE camera footage from, I believe it was a witness, Mr. Hotvet, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You were also able to obtain the VIC camera footage from that North Highland, Elizabeth Street area and from the Beltline.
So we had actually requested that that our VIC unit, again, has people monitoring the cameras to start looking for footage in that area. And we were able to actually dedicate some time to reviewing that footage starting around the 28th.
And on that day, did you also, on the 28th specifically, you talked about the autopsy of Mr. Arnold, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you attend that yourself?
I did.
Okay. And what were the findings ultimately?
So Mr. Arnold had some bruising to his right side, which coincided with the way he was lying. And there was, where the pool of blood was on his face, was actually an entry wound from a bullet. So the bullet entered the face. That's how the top of the mouth received the injury, and then to the back of the head.
At that point, were you able to conclusively rule out anything other than homicide?
Correct.
Now, on February 28th of 2022, did you speak to a resident or someone working at 331 Elizabeth Street, Clinton Pike?
Yes.
Okay. And did he provide some additional footage that aided in creating a timeline?
He did.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that.
So as we canvassed the area, we also, were verbally communicating to the community if anybody has any footage, if anybody has any accounts from that night of anything that seems off. We'd like to explore all possibilities related to this. And we received some video from this. It's a warehouse angle, and you don't see the Beltline, you don't see the incident, but what you hear is the gunshot.
Now, before I pull up the video, which has been previously tendered into evidence at State's Exhibit 8, I want to go back to State's Exhibit 5, that map that we have, to see if you could just orient us the difference between where this warehouse would have been and where each circle would be.
Okay.
Now, in looking at this in State's Exhibit 5, are you able to orient us to where that warehouse would have been, that area?
Yeah, so the warehouse is about, do I need to hit the buttons?
Tap the pencil and the red dot.
Okay. So the warehouse is about right here. Or maybe, no, it was right here, I'm sorry.
And is that the front facing Elizabeth Street?
That is facing Elizabeth Street, yes. This would be Elizabeth Street.
Okay. So the back side of that warehouse would be kind of in a divot in between, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then where the body of Mr. Arnold was located, about where would that be from there?
So it was right here.
I'm going to publish with sound State's Exhibit 8. date we see associated with this video?
10:27 p.m. on February 25th, 2022.
Apologize, there was a bit of a delay in the sound, so I'm just going to replay it since the short ended. And Sergeant Parent, in your expertise, your years with the city of Atlanta, your years with homicide, what did you observe that sound we heard around 10:27 p.m.?
I believed it to be a gunshot.
Now, the evidence that is collected at the scene, does it go to different, I guess, areas or departments for examination?
Yes, so any forensic evidence that we locate relating to a crime scene goes to the GBI. Initially, our crime scene techs, they'll collect it to make sure that it's in, all the orders and protocols are followed to it, and then they submit that on behalf of the detective to the GBI for analysis.
Was anything done with City of Atlanta with the shell casing that was found on the scene?
Yes, so the shell casing that was recovered was analyzed to see certain aspects to it if can be related, traced back to the firearm, and can help identify the firearm used, and if a firearm has been used in a crime or in previous crimes, it will have the same characteristics on that casing that they're able then under a microscope to say one way or the other if a firearm was used in that particular case or maybe related to other cases.
Did they find that relation to any other cases with the shell casing here?
No.
Now, at this point, at February 28, 2022, the footage that we've seen, what you've gathered so far, do you have any suspects developed?
No.
Does your investigation continue?
Yes, it does.
Now, let's turn to your next kind of day of development on March 5th, 2022. Did you do any further review of those 3 days of Wise camera footage that were provided?
Yes. So at this point, we have an abundance of video footage that we have been combing through. As you can imagine, we're trying to establish a time frame. We're trying to follow the victim and see his whereabouts, who he's interacting with, what was his, where he was going, did he make any stops? And so reviewing multiple sources of footage. And on that corner Wise camera where we see Mr. Arnold pass by towards the Beltline, we notice a black vehicle, a BMW, that's parked off to the side. And we notice that 3 males approach the vehicle and start looking at it, and then one male steps off to the side across the street from them, while the other 2 enter the vehicle and begin searching through the contents of the vehicle. They then exit the vehicle, pop the trunk, and start going through the contents of the trunk. When reviewing the footage, I found it interesting because earlier there's a female that actually drives the car up and parks it in that location and walks away from it. Not any of the males that were depicted in the footage that I was watching.
I'm going to show you State Exhibit 9, previously entered in the evidence, around timestamp 22:05 on the evening of February 25th, 2022. Exhibit 9, around that time of 22:05, is this where you observed those 3 males and the activity you described?
Yes, it is.
Okay. In 22:05, what time would that be to
Uh,
non-military?
10:05 p.m.
Thank you. And I'm just pressing pressing pause very quickly at 22:05:08. Do we see what direction those males are coming from?
Yes, they're coming further up from the area up the street where Bernina intersects with another side street, and there's a restaurant up that way.
And if you could please, using that, tapping the pencil and using that red pencil, could you circle the screen where you observe them at this point? Thank you. Resuming at that timestamp of 22:05:08. And Sergeant Parent, again, on the left side of the screen where we observe this black vehicle, is that the vehicle you're referring to, the BMW?
Yes, it is.
And what direction do we see the males headed in?
They're traveling on Elizabeth Street towards North Highland Ave.
Pausing here at 22:06:37 timestamp, you mentioned that you observed this vehicle as belonging to someone else from the same camera footage?
Same camera footage.
Okay. I am going to open up State's Exhibit 9. An earlier timestamp.
February 25th, 2022, and 1551, which would be 351.
Play at that time. Timestamp 15 hours, 54 minutes, 54 seconds. And what do we observe here?
The person who had been driving the vehicle, presumed to be the owner of the vehicle, exiting the vehicle and walking away. And it is a female based on physical attributes, characteristics.
15 hours, 54 minutes, and 20 seconds.
Is this a good time to break for lunch?
Yes, Judge, it would be.
All right, let's come back at 1:40, please. Deputy, please make sure every juror has a visible juror sticker. Thank you.
Recording stopped.